the circles because there was only one section within it. It's the shortest chapter of the RPS, but an important one. So this is the focus. It was on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to respond to the effects of climate change, for example, greater levels of coastal inundation, and that's probably one of the main ones. But I guess the approach is really just to recognise that a compact urban form does reduce reliance on energy-intensive forms of private transport. It does allow for an increase in the use of public transport, walking and cycling, and therefore there are links back to greenhouse gas emissions and therefore climate change. So that was recognised in this part of the RPS. Sought to increase energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy and carbon sinks to contribute to the mitigation of adverse effects, and sought to increase resilience to anticipated effects of climate change, which was covered in the natural hazards chapter as well, so perhaps a little bit of duplication here. So that's the sort of policy framework in the RPS. As I say, a very short chapter, only a few pages long. Submitters' views. This is quite a specific one, but I guess we did have submissions up at the RPS saying that there should be an approach of limiting the use of hard engineering measures, especially in new development, and that's things like, I guess, concrete retaining walls, sea walls, for both flooding of streams and also for coastal hazards. Some submitters sought to minimise or avoid risk in new urban development and infrastructure, and that was largely consistent with our approach in terms of natural hazards as a result of climate change. Some sort of a stronger vision or goal for Auckland on how to respond to climate change. That I guess the feeling was that the unitary plan wasn't being bold or visionary enough. And some sought to strengthen the policies to require action rather than encourage. So they felt that language was a bit passive and that there should be more proactive measures taken, starting with the unitary plan as a key council policy tool. And some submitters sought to encourage the use of renewable energy and increase the emphasis on carbon reduction. And I think we had that pretty much covered in the plan anyway. And there wasn't a lot of change proposed to that section of the plan, just a few minor wording changes. And that is
pretty much what we asked for.
Believe it or not, okay. That's a kind of tour of the engine room of the unitary plan.
Okay, that's great. Want to comment on the slide, John?
Yeah, I think so. I guess one of the challenges in pulling this presentation together and all the presentations is that you know, with hundreds, if not thousands, of submission points on each of the topics, there is a risk that we might have overemphasised something or underemphasised something or missed something. So we've done our best to avoid that. We've had our lead planners think about it really carefully, but just directing you to the relevant part of the panel website, where you'll find all of the council's evidence, some documents from the panel that summarise what the submitters were asking for in more detail than we've been able to, and also the evidence from the submitters themselves. So we'll always provide you at the end of these presentations with the specific topics. So this is topic 005, 013 and 018, and that's where you'll find all the detail on the website, and we can certainly help you find that information if you need some specifics.
Thank you, John. We were just making a comment up here. These are really, really good kind of background documents that I know Councillor Casey asked wisely right at the beginning. How will we find our way into, you know, the decision-making process at the end? And I guess with this reminding us what we wanted, what we've ended up with, and what we tried to achieve, and what the chapters are, kind of shows what the discussion on each of those has been about. So I guess I'm recommending that people hold on to these as their sort of quick reference point for when it comes back to us. Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just on that, we're also looking at running a briefing session for your support staff, local board and council support staff. We've had an initial discussion with them, but we're going to do a more detailed training session on how they can use this sort of information to find specific submissions that you might be interested in, or a specific piece of council's evidence, anything like that, or the interim guidance. So training those support staff. Leanne, I'm not entirely sure, perhaps Luann's pretty sharp at this sort of thing anyway, but we can, yeah.
That's good. Okay, right, let's press on.
can I just raise a question at this point, or a suggestion?
Yep.
I'm assuming that this information is going to be public. Is this going to be on our website? It's going to be attached to the minutes or the like of the meeting?
It's all public.
All of the presentations that you receive will be up on the website with the agenda and the report.
Sure. Given that this information is referencing other information, for example, it's referencing submitters' views, it's representing our evidence, it's representing interim guidance, and given that this is going to be going on the web, would it be possible to put some web links in, just to make it easy for people to do some digging if they want to find further information? Because my experience is trying to find stuff on the Unitary Plan site can be pretty tricky if there's a link there, and I'm assuming that the person that's preparing this is obviously all over it. It wouldn't be hard just to bolt those on.
So the purpose of the last slide was to give that link for people who want to look into it in more detail. I think the challenge we have is we can't really second guess which submitter or which submission a person might be interested in, so we can only send them to the link where the chapters are discussed and then leave it for them to look into which ones they're interested in. But
well, I'm just suggesting that there could be just a broad link. For example, let's say somebody's interested in mana whenua provisions or climate change or the like. If there was a link, you can go straight there, and that's a hang of a lot quicker than wading through.
we would we'll certainly look and see if that's possible. What we don't want to do is send people to one area and actually they want to go somewhere else. So we will look and to see how
making it easy for them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Right.
It's not easy.
We'll just.
Someone.
Oh, we've lost John. No.
No,
John.
Just give up.
yeah.
So Chloe's going to do.
We could make it.
You're going to do it. I thought you were doing the GIS.
Anything's okay.
All right. Who have we got?
Okay, we've got Anne Cheng, our Southern Area Planning Manager, who's going to talk us through the RUP. Anne was our lead manager on this topic, so I'll hand over to Anne.
Right, change of frequency of voice. So, what we're covering, the use of the rural-urban boundary as an urban growth management tool, the RUP as it was notified, the summary of the submitters' views, Council's position at the hearings, and the major areas of differences between the Council and the submitters. So the rural-urban boundary is a tool to identify locations for future urban growth which will achieve compact urban form. And that is a very important part. It's not just anywhere out in the greenfield area, but then we have to identify the location and where it can achieve the compact urban form. It is different from the former metropolitan urban limit, referred to as the MUL. It is not hard up against the current urban edge. It is not a short-term staging post, but it is a long-term 30 years growth. It provides for roughly 30 years growth capacity. The advantage of it is that it proactively identifies future urban growth areas, and it therefore provides certainty to infrastructure providers, landowners in rural locations, and developers and investors. So many people looked at it as a restrictive, but it is actually a proactive, positive tool. And obviously, because of the long-term nature, it will imply that there's a need for monitoring, so that we need to keep that capacity in place for a 7-year capacity for growth. Oops, it's gone backwards. I know. So we've got a rub line in the north, the west, the south, and also on Waiheke Island. Within the notified rub, we have just under 11,000 hectare greenfield future urban land. And within it, generally, it is zoned future urban. And I'll come to that about the zoning within the rub in a minute. So, here we are. It requires a future structure planning, on confirmation of the line of the rub. It requires future structure planning and a plan change to live zone the land for urban uses. So until such time, within the future urban zone, there are rules about the activity status, and generally it is about avoiding development that will compromise future urban development, future urban growth. And the sequence of future development is guided by the future urban land supply strategy, and John, in his presentation, referred to that, the fulls. And I think our lawyers referred to that as a three-legged stool, so that we have the RPS, the RUB, and then it is also the future urban land supply. So this diagram shows the going from the brownish color, so this is the current urban area. If it was the case of the mull, we'll probably just go to that year 1 to 10, so that it is hard up. But in fact, we're looking at years 11 to 20 and 21 to 30. And that also aligns with the way we look at the future urban land supply strategy. So overall, the rub is at the extreme, and it provides for that long-term capacity.
Yeah, just hang on a second.
So can I just ask quick, if you don't mind, Madam Chair? So when we were talking before about the RUB being in the district plan rather than the RPS, is that, would we be envisaging that, say, year 7 in the 1 to 10, if someone had some land in the year 11 to 20, it's more likely that they would want to go through a plan change to bring that forward?
I actually think what it would mean is, if you look at the diagram in front, it would be people asking for private plan changes to shift the rub into the green area, the rural land. So it's not so much, we will always be dealing with people who might want to rezone the land that's currently future urban zone to urban earlier than the future urban land supply strategy. That's one, and that's one option that is available to them, and we haven't prevented that option in the unitary plan. But what we were talking about, the guidance from the panel would mean, if that's what they recommend, is you could actually remove that hard edge, it's not a hard edge, the rub line between the green and the beige out through a private plan change process. So you can, so it would go into the green area. And what we don't know, and one of the councillors, board member Baker might have asked the question, was about would it have to be contiguous with that rub line, or could it be a separate island out in a rural area? And we don't know at this stage, but private plan changes would mean you could shift that rub line into the green further.
The current council position is that this is the council position for the location of the rub line, and in future, if it stays in the RPS, it will be up to council through monitoring to decide whether we need more land and that to change that line. But if that line was to stay in the district plan part of the unitary plan, so private sector can apply to change that line to give more land.
Madam Chair, that's why I wanted clarification that, because I mean that puts a slightly different complexion on how we might make a decision.
Okay, yeah, no, good to clarify that. Is it a question on this, Councillor Quacks, or can we go all the way through?
I do have a question, because I think that, well, I find it somewhat confusing, and I'm sure other people find it somewhat confusing, because we're still committed to a 70-40 split, right?
Yes.
And that 70% urban growth will occur within the 2010 MUL. So that MUL, despite the fact that you're saying, or
Councillor Quacks, we don't use the word MUL.
Oh, don't say that word.
We use the word
Point of order.
the metropolitan urban We use the words
I'm sorry, I have to go to a re-education camp.
So we
Berlin
use the
Wall.
words the metropolitan urban area that existed in 2010,
Ten.
which is not the same as a metropolitan urban limit. It's actually saying in 2010 where we had urban zoning, that's what that current urban area is. Anything beyond that is part of the consideration of the 40%.
Okay.
So it may be
Can I
useful on that ground, but to
rephrase my
actually
question
write
so
that.
that I speak in politically correct language? So the 580 square kilometres of urban area at the moment, we will be 70% of growth will go into that area.